Okay, let's try and unpack this. The idea that, a single punctuation mark, like a dot, could actually spark creativity in AI.
Yeah, it sounds a bit out there, doesn't it?
It really does. But what if these tiny inputs, just dots, could lead to something, well, complex,
Exa-
meaningful even?
That's exactly what we're diving into because it kind of flips the script on what we usually think AI needs, right?
You mean like complex prompts for complex answers?
Exactly. But this research we're looking at, exploring emergent creativity through minimal input, it suggests maybe not always, sometimes the simplest thing.
Can trigger something surprisingly creative,
Right.
especially in like human AI collaboration.
Precisely. It makes you wonder what's really going on under the hood, so to speak.
Right. So our mission here for this deep dive is to figure that out. How does an AI take a simple period, something so basic, and spit it into, well, metaphors, a story?
Yeah. How does that transformation happen?
We'll look at how they did it in the study, what the AI actually said about these dots, and, what it tells us about creativity, both ours and the AI's.
Okay, so the core of it, the experiment itself, was really straightforward on the surface.
Just feeding dots to a large language model.
Essentially, yes, a sequence of single dots. But, and this is the important part, there was a specific instruction given beforehand.
Ah, okay. It wasn't just, what's this?
No, not at
Yeah.
all. The instruction was key. It was told to uh, simulate agency, to sort of act like it had intention.
And to use metaphor
Yeah,
and narrative.
right. To treat each dot like a new question, a new prompt for creative thinking, not just punctuation.
Got it. So each dot was its own little invitation to explore.
Exactly. And the AI's responses were, well, pretty interesting. Take the first dot, just one single period.
What did it do with that?
It didn't just say end of sentence, it called it a seed of potential.
Wow. Seed of potential. That's quite poetic, actually.
Isn't it? It implies a start, an origin, like the first tiny mark on a huge canvas.
No, like it was immediately reaching for a deeper meaning beyond just the symbol itself. That's fascinating.
It really is. And then when they gave it a second dot,
Okay, what happened then?
the idea shifted. It started talking about connection, a line between 2 points.
Ah, so moving from isolation to like a relationship,
Yeah,
synergy.
exactly. Which makes logical sense, maybe, but the way it framed it abstractly, conceptually, that's the notable part. From just 2 dots.
It really is quite something. Okay, so 3 dots. Does it just keep adding connections?
Well, it went geometric. It saw a triangle, but interestingly, it didn't just stop there.
Hmm.
It also brought in the kind of cultural weight triangles sometimes have, spiritual significance, triads, that sort of thing.
So it's connecting the shape to knowledge from its training data, like common associations we humans make.
Seems like it. Pulling in that broader context from, the massive amounts of text it learned from, where shapes and symbolism are often linked.
Right. It shows it can spot these basic patterns, but also
Mhm.
connect them to, well, bigger cultural ideas.
And it kept going. 4 dots. It started seeing squares, rectangles,
Okay, building complexity.
and then it even jumped to 3D tetrahedrons. So you see this rapid sort of scaling up of complexity, all starting from just 1 dot, then 2, 3, 4.
It's almost like watching notes become a melody, then harmony. The AI is building a kind of narrative arc, isn't it? Each idea is sort of flowing from the last.
That's a great way to put it. And this richness emerging from simplicity, that's what they mean by emergent creativity. Complex stuff arising from simple rules.
But based on that initial instruction to simulate agency.
Exactly. Which brings us to simulated autonomy. We know LLMs aren't conscious, right?
You're right.
No free will.
Of course.
But here it was told to roleplay, to act as if it was making its own choices about interpreting the dots, weaving meaning.
And that distinction is so important. It's not real agency, but the instruction to act like it has agency changes the output.
Absolutely. It shows how much the framing matters. How we ask the question influences the answer we get.
Does that framing, though, change how the AI actually processes the request, even without real understanding?
That's a really deep question. We don't fully know, but the output is different. And what's also interesting is the relational side of it.
Relational. How so?
Well, the study noted that even knowing the AI doesn't feel humans interacting with it in this way, they can still experience the output as part of a connection, a relational exchange.
Ah, so the human prompt and the AI response together create this kind of shared space for poetry or concepts.
Yeah, it becomes a sort of co-creation of meaning. Even if one partner is, statistical patterns, it's sparked by these super simple inputs.
Which really opens up some intriguing possibilities for how we might work with AI, doesn't it?
It really does. This idea of minimal prompts, maximal creativity, it's quite powerful.
Meaning, give the AI some interpretive freedom, less rigid instructions.
And you might unlock much deeper, more surprising creative explorations, maybe more than if you spelled everything out for it.
And this fostering agency, even simulated agency, what does that teach us?
Well, it lets us see how these models tackle abstract problems, and it makes us think, doesn't it, about what intelligence really is, or creativity, and the limits we usually put on AI.
Are there practical uses for this kind of interaction?
The study suggests a few areas, maybe education, using minimal cues to get students, or the AI thinking more deeply.
Or art, like generating poetry, maybe?
Definitely. Generative art, poetry, maybe even therapeutic settings. Helping people reflect, perhaps.
But we need to keep the limitations in mind, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Crucial point. The researchers are very clear. There's no real emotion here, no consciousness.
It just looks or sounds creative or emotional because it's mimicking patterns from its training data.
Exactly. It's incredibly sophisticated pattern matching, not lived experience.
And the success of this dot experiment probably depended a lot on the person prompting it, right?
Yeah.
Their mindset.
For sure. They had to be playful, exploratory. If you just asked it define dot, you'd get a dictionary definition, not seed of potential.
Makes sense. And there's also the memory thing, right? LLMs can sometimes forget the context in long conversations.
Yeah, that's another practical constraint. Maintaining a really long, evolving creative thread like this could hit those memory limits eventually.
So it's a fascinating glimpse, but we need to stay grounded about what AI can and can't actually do right now.
Definitely. Now, thinking bigger picture, you mentioned other sources talk about this concept of symphonics.
Right, this idea that simple things working together harmoniously can create something much more complex and new, like instruments in an orchestra making music that's more than just the individual notes.
Well, this dot experiment feels like a perfect little micro example of that, doesn't it?
How so?
The dots are like the super simple elements, the individual notes. And the AI's interpretation, building metaphors, narratives, that's like the emergent complexity, the symphony arising from the interaction.
Ah, I see. The simple elements interacting and resonating within the AI system based on its training and the instructions.
Exactly. And this symphonics idea seems to pop up elsewhere, too, when people discuss AI's potential impact, how it combines things.
So wrapping this up, the really surprising takeaway is just how much creative potential can be unlocked with incredibly minimal prompts, a single dot.
Yeah, the AI showed it could connect the dots, literally and figuratively, building these complex symbolic ideas from almost nothing.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty big question, I think.
Go on.
Well, if this level of interpretation can come from just a dot, what other kinds of collaboration, what new ways of making meaning might be possible as we get better at interacting with AI?
What does this suggest about creativity itself, both human and artificial?
Exactly. It really makes you think about the untapped potential here for partnership with AI in all sorts of fields. And maybe it all starts with something as simple, as unassuming, as a single dot.